The Grand Hall of the Galactic Concord was a masterpiece of alien opulence, a vast chamber where the rulers of the cosmos dictated the fate of lesser species. Towering crystalline structures shimmered with colors imperceptible to the human eye, while gravity-defying platforms hovered, each holding representatives of the most powerful empires. At the center stood Overlord Selvaris, a towering insectoid being with an exoskeleton harder than steel. His multifaceted eyes gleamed with amusement as he loomed over the human delegation. And so, the creatures of Sol arrive, Selvaris declared, his mandibles clicking in mockery. His voice echoed through the chamber, distorted by translation devices that converted his alien speech into something humans could understand. Your kind has scraped together enough technology to achieve faster-than-light travel, a commendable effort for a species so new. The hall erupted in laughter. Deep, guttural chuckles from the reptilian Scarvish Dominion, shrill chirps from the avian Carrie Coalition, and a dozen other alien dialects all converging into a singular sound: ridicule. Humanity's lead delegate, Ambassador Elias Carter, did not flinch. He was an older man, silver-haired but sharp-eyed, wearing a crisp navy blue suit instead of the traditional robes expected of a representative. He stood in stark contrast to the flamboyant, jeweled attire of the Concord's rulers. Selvaris leaned forward. The Concord welcomes you. As an observer state, you will not be permitted to vote. You will not be allowed to field a military above a single patrol fleet. Your technology will be regulated. Do not concern yourselves with matters beyond your station. More laughter. The Tikari representative waved a claw dismissively. Humans should be honored. Most primitive species are not even allowed inside these halls. Carter smiled. A small, knowing smile, one that made the laughter falter. Most primitive species wouldn't have made it here, Carter said evenly. He took a slow step forward, his polished shoes clicking against the pristine floor. His next words carried a weight that cut through the smug arrogance in the room. You believe humanity is here to ask permission. His eyes swept across the gathered rulers. To beg for acceptance. To kneel. Silence. Carter's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. You mistake us for something we are not. Selvaris twitched. And what exactly are you? Carter clasped his hands behind his back. We are the species that looked at the void of space and saw not an obstacle, but a frontier. His voice rose, steady and unshaken. We are the species that has spent centuries surviving war, catastrophe, and the worst that our own world could throw at us, only to emerge stronger. You sit in your thrones, ruling over a fragile order built on fear and stagnation. But humanity, his smile vanished. We don't fear the unknown. We conquer it. The hall was deathly silent. Carter straightened his tie. Now, about those voting rights. The silence that followed Carter's words was deafening. Selvaris's mandibles clicked in agitation, and a ripple of discomfort spread through the chamber. The Galactic Concord was not used to being challenged, especially not by an upstart species that had only just stepped onto the galactic stage. But humans had never been ones to play by the rules. Selvaris recovered quickly, his faceted eyes narrowing. Confidence, he mused, voice dripping with condescension. How quaint. His posture shifted, and at his unspoken command, a holographic display flared to life in the center of the chamber. A map of the galaxy unfolded before them. Hundreds of star systems glowed, each labeled with the sigils of the dominant powers. Near the edge of the map, the Sol system blinked, a tiny speck on the grand scale of the universe. You speak of conquest, human, but let me show you reality. Selvaris gestured, and the display zoomed in, revealing Earth's position. The surrounding regions were dominated by towering empires. The Vorak Dominion, the Scarvish Supremacy, the Tikari Coalition, all species with fleets that could reduce human colonies to ash in a single engagement. The Concord is a delicate balance, maintained by those who have ruled for millennia. Selvaris continued. Humanity is tolerated, but you are in no position to negotiate. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Carter remained unfazed. And yet, Carter said smoothly, "It seems you fear what humanity might do." He gestured toward the hologram. "If we were as insignificant as you claim, you wouldn't be showing us maps of our own system like a warning." Zelvarus's eyes flashed. "A lesson, not a warning. This is the way of things. The economies of the Concord are controlled by the Galactic Banking Guild. The trade routes are owned by the Scarvesh. The Vorak Dominion enforces military restrictions. Your species will abide by the same terms as all other minor races: one patrol fleet, no autonomous AI, and a 10% tariff on all interstellar trade." Carter tilted his head. "Ah, so the game is rigged." The Tikari delegate squawked in amusement. "Rigged? Hardly. It is tradition." Carter chuckled. "That's what every outdated empire says before it collapses." A hush fell over the chamber. The insult was blatant. Zelvarus's exoskeleton flexed as he fought to maintain composure. "You will find, human, that tradition is enforced by power." Carter nodded. "We understand power quite well." He reached into his suit pocket and retrieved a small data chip. With a casual flick of his wrist, he tossed it onto the holographic interface. The display flickered. A new map appeared, one that made several delegates stiffen in alarm. It showed dozens of species, small, overlooked civilizations, who had quietly signed trade and defense pacts with humanity. Agreements forged in secret, an unseen alliance that now threatened the Concord's balance. Carter adjusted his cufflinks. "Shall we discuss the future?" The moment Carter's hologram flickered off, the chamber erupted into chaos. The revelation that humanity had quietly built a network of trade and defense pacts with dozens of minor species sent shockwaves through the Concord's ruling elite. The Scarvesh delegation hissed in fury, the Tikari chittered nervously, and Zelvarus's mandibles clenched so tightly they cracked. "You dare undermine the Concord's authority?" The Vorak Dominion's warlord, High Strategos Volkar, bellowed. His hulking, reptilian form loomed over Carter, scales shimmering with barely restrained rage. "You've broken every diplomatic protocol. Your species has no right to build alliances without Concord approval." Carter simply raised an eyebrow. "We weren't aware we needed permission to make friends." Laughter erupted, not from the ruling elite, but from some of the lesser species present. The cracks in the old order were already showing. Volkar snarled, "We will not tolerate this insubordination. The Vorak Dominion declares war on humanity." Silence. The declaration echoed through the Grand Chamber like a death sentence. The Vorak fleet, one of the most powerful in the galaxy, outnumbered and outgunned humanity 100-1. Zelvarus's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. A regrettable but necessary step. Perhaps now, the humans will learn their place. Carter sighed, shaking his head. "You always think war is the answer. That's the problem with stagnant empires. You assume force will always be enough to win." He turned to the holographic interface, activating a new transmission. A live feed appeared, displaying a Vorak fleet, a massive armada of battleships and dreadnoughts, descending upon New Avalon, a human colony on the edge of Concord space. The aliens expected the battle to be over in minutes. But that's not what happened. The Vorak ships suddenly veered off course as their navigation systems scrambled, forcing them into erratic flight patterns. Their shields flickered and failed as unseen pulses of energy overwhelmed their defenses. Then, without warning, human stealth cruisers emerged from behind a nearby moon, launching kinetic bombardments that tore through Vorak hulls like paper. The chamber erupted into shocked gasps. "How?" Volkar growled, his claws digging into the table. "How are your forces?" "The Vorak like to think of themselves as unstoppable warriors," Carter said smoothly. "But you rely too much on outdated strategies. Humanity doesn't fight fair." The feed showed Vorak warships collapsing in fireballs as human eye-driven drones swarmed their formations, exploiting every structural weakness. You assumed we would fight on your terms, Carter continued. But while you relied on brute strength, we focused on adaptability. Cyber warfare, autonomous battle AI, electronic jamming, predictive targeting models, all things you deemed dishonorable in war. But we don't care about honor. We care about winning. The feed cut to black. The battle was over. Humanity had won. Carter leaned forward, smiling coldly. Still want that war. The Vorak defeat sent a shockwave through the Galactic Concord. A species that was supposed to be crushed in an instant had just dismantled one of the most feared fleets in the galaxy. The chamber of the Concord was silent as the live feed ended. Vulcar, once brimming with arrogance, now trembled with barely contained rage. His warriors had not simply lost. They had been humiliated. Carter adjusted his suit. That was just a patrol fleet, wasn't it? He asked casually. You can always send another. Vulcar's claws scraped the table, but he said nothing. The Vorak Dominion might have been able to throw numbers at their problems in the past, but now, their strategic advantage had been shattered. The illusion of their invincibility was gone. Zelveris, however, was not so easily shaken. He leaned back, his multifaceted eyes studying Carter with renewed calculation. This changes nothing, Zelveris said smoothly. The Vorak miscalculated. That is true. But you are mistaken if you believe the Concord will allow this defiance to continue. You have won a battle, not the war. Carter gave him a knowing smile. You misunderstand me, Overlord. We're not waiting for war. We've already started it. At that exact moment, half the galaxy descended into chaos. Trade routes collapsed overnight as human cyber warfare shut down Concord banking systems, freezing assets of major factions. Corporate espionage units deployed economic warfare, flooding black markets with alternative human trade networks that bypassed Concord controls. Minor species, long oppressed by the Concord, rose in rebellion, backed by covert human military support. The Galactic Concord had ruled through fear, wealth, and control. In less than a week, humanity had shattered all three. The chamber exploded into shouting. The Scarvash economy is collapsing. The Vorak supply lines have been compromised. The lesser races are revolting. Zelveris' claws tapped against the table in irritation. How? Carter's eyes gleamed. You assumed humanity was playing by your rules. He leaned forward, his voice calm but razor-sharp. We weren't. For centuries, the Concord had crushed uprisings and rebellions before they could begin. They had silenced dissent before it gained traction. But humanity had flipped the board entirely. Zelveris exhaled slowly. This is a declaration of war. Carter shrugged. We prefer to call it a regime change. The Overlord studied him for a long moment. Then, for the first time, Zelveris felt something no ruler of the Concord had ever felt before. Fear. Zelveris had ruled the Concord for over 4 centuries. He had crushed rebellions, orchestrated assassinations, and outmaneuvered rival empires with cold precision. He had believed humanity was just another minor race, an annoyance to be contained. He was wrong. As the Concord crumbled at the edges, Zelveris issued a single order to his inner circle. Activate the contingency plan. On the edge of Concord space, within the glittering spires of Varnock Prime, the leaders of the newly formed Free Species Coalition gathered in secret. They were a collection of smaller races, once vassals of the Concord, now allies of humanity. And they were about to die. The attack came without warning. Concord stealth fleets, hidden for weeks in deep space folds, decloaked above Varnock Prime. Before the planetary defense grid could react, orbital bombardment commenced. Beams of searing plasma cut through the atmosphere, turning entire city blocks to molten slag. The Free Species Coalition had believed they had time to organize, to solidify their power. But Zelveris had no intention of letting that happen. By the time the first distress signals reached human command, Varnock Prime was burning. Carter stood in the war room aboard the Resolute, humanity's flagship stationed in deep space. The holographic display flickered with red alerts, every one of them an attack on their allies. The Scarvish Dominion had unleashed bioweapons on rebelling slave worlds. The Vorak had launched planet-cracking munitions on cities that had dared to side with humanity. Entire species were being erased overnight. Carter clenched his fists. They weren't fighting a war. The Concord was committing genocide. The room was silent, the weight of the moment pressing on every officer present. Then, General Vasquez, commander of the Terran Defense Fleet, exhaled sharply. "We held back," she said. "We played this war like a game of chess." Her dark eyes flickered toward Carter. "I say we stop playing." Carter looked at her, then at the display, then at the faces of every officer who had fought to give humanity a chance. He nodded. No more half measures. The wrath of Earth descended upon the Concord. Humanity had spent years studying Concord fleets, mapping their weaknesses. Their weapons were built for domination, not defense. They had never fought an adaptive enemy. And now, they would burn. The first counterattack came at Scarvish Prime, the heart of the Dominion's war machine. Human warships emerged from hyperspace rifts and unleashed rods from God. Tungsten slugs that fell like meteors, obliterating orbital stations and weapons factories in minutes. The Vorak, still reeling from their last defeat, launched a desperate counteroffensive, only to find their fleet's eye had been hacked. Their own ships turned against them, firing on allies before self-destructing. The Concord had believed itself invincible. Now it was dying, and humanity had just begun. The Galactic Concord had ruled for millennia. Now it was burning. Across the stars, human fleets struck with ruthless efficiency. What the Concord had once dismissed as an upstart species had become an unstoppable force of war, wielding adaptation, subterfuge, and overwhelming firepower. Scarvish Prime fell first, its war factories reduced to slag before their fleets could even rally. The Vorak Dominion collapsed next, their own automated defenses turned against them. Even the mighty T'Kari coalition, once laughing at humanity, found their fleets scattered and broken before they could retreat. Humanity did not fight for territory or wealth. They fought for vengeance. In the heart of the Concord, deep within the celestial spire, Overlord Xelverus watched his empire crumble from his throne. The once grand chamber, where he had dictated the fates of entire species, was now a war room of desperation. "Reports," he hissed. A trembling Vorak strategist swallowed hard. "The Vorak homeworld has fallen." Xelverus's mandibles twitched. "And the Scarvish. Their fleets are shattered. The T'Kari. They surrendered." Xelverus felt something he had not known in centuries. Panic. He turned to his last remaining warlord, Admiral Krax, leader of the Concord's final fleet, docked above HFY, the Concord's capital world. "We still hold HFY," Xelverus said, forcing authority into his voice. "We will make our stand here. Humanity is strong, yes, but they cannot break Archean. They cannot break us." A silence fell over the chamber. Then, slowly, Krax turned to him. "You don't understand," Krax said, voice hollow. "We're already dead." Xelverus's mandibles clicked. "What are you talking about?" Krax's eyes darkened. "The humans aren't coming to conquer. They're coming to end us." Above HFY, the sky turned black. The largest fleet in human history emerged from hyperspace. The Terran Armada, forged in fire, armed for extinction. Carter stood aboard the Resolute, watching as the fleet took formation. "Final transmission from the Concord," a comms officer reported. "They're demanding a ceasefire." Carter smirked. "Did they grant one to the worlds they burned?" The officer swallowed. "No, sir." Carter nodded. "Then they get nothing." He turned to General Vasquez. "Execute Project Ragnarok." The orbital bombardment of HFY began with no warning, no mercy. City ships crumbled under kinetic strikes. Planetary defenses fried under EMP blasts. Concord soldiers, bred for conquest, fell before orbital railgun barrages. Overlord Selvarus watched in horror as his throne world burned. For the first time in Concord history, the rulers who had dictated the fate of the galaxy had no power left, and humanity had claimed the throne. Archon VII burned for 3 days and nights. The once glorious capital of the Galactic Concord, the seat of power that had ruled over 1,000 species for millennia, was no more. The orbital bombardment had left the planet's surface scared and shattered. The celestial spire, where the overlords had dictated the fate of entire civilizations, lay in ruins, its once pristine towers now nothing more than twisted wreckage. The old order was dead, and in its place, humanity had risen. The Galactic Concord was finished. The Vorak were leaderless. The Scarvesh homeworld was in chaos. The Tikeri had surrendered before the final battle even began. One by one, the surviving Concord species submitted to the inevitable. On the bridge of the Resolute, Carter watched as the final surrender transmissions came in. He stood in silence, absorbing the moment. The war was over. Humanity had won. But now came the hard part. "Sir," General Vasquez said, stepping forward, "what do we do with the survivors?" Carter exhaled. This was the question. Humanity had 2 choices. They could wipe out the Concord entirely, ensuring that no alien species would ever rise against them again. They could rule through fear, just as the Concord had. They could enslave, dictate, and dominate, becoming the very thing they had fought against. Or they could build something greater. Carter turned to Vasquez. "Open a channel to all surviving species." A moment later, every remaining government, every defeated warlord, every leader still alive received the transmission. Carter stepped forward, his expression hard but not without mercy. "The Concord is gone," he said. "Your empires have fallen. Your fleets are destroyed. Humanity has taken the throne." He let the silence linger before speaking again. "But we did not come to rule like the overlords before us. We are not your conquerors. We are your liberators." Across the galaxy, entire species held their breath. "We know the cruelty of the Concord," Carter continued. "We know what it means to be seen as lesser. Humanity refuses to become what we fought against." He leaned forward. "We offer you a choice. Stand with us, and together we will build a new order, one where no species is ruled by fear, where power is earned, not inherited." His voice hardened. "But if you resist, you will fall." The message was clear. The age of humanity had begun. Across the stars, the surviving species had a choice. Some, desperate to survive, pledged loyalty immediately. Others hesitated. But one thing was certain. Humanity was now the dominant force in the galaxy. For the first time in history, the fate of the stars was in the hands of mankind. The war was over. The Galactic Concord, once an empire that spanned thousands of systems, was no more. Its rulers were dead or in hiding, its armies shattered, and its fleets reduced to drifting wreckage in the void. Humanity now stood alone atop the galactic throne. But the question remained, what kind of rulers would they be? The first Galactic Summit was held on New Avalon, one of humanity's oldest and most developed colonies. Representatives from every surviving species, former Concord warlords, rebel leaders, and newly freed civilizations, gathered in the massive central hall. They expected oppression. They expected tyranny. They expected humanity to rule as the Concord once had, through terror and domination. But what they got was something else entirely. Carter stood before them, the newly appointed chancellor of the Terran hegemony, flanked by human leaders and military commanders. "We did not fight this war for conquest," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We did not take the throne to become your masters." Murmurs spread through the crowd. "We fought to break the chains that bound us all," Carter continued. "But we will not replace them with new ones. Instead, we offer you something the Concord never did." He paused, letting the words sink in. A choice. The chamber fell silent. We will forge a new order, not built on fear, but on strength and cooperation. The Terran hegemony will lead, but we will not rule alone. Those who stand with us will have a voice in this new future. But let one thing be clear. The age of weakness is over. He let his gaze sweep over the gathered leaders. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are threats beyond the Concord, enemies you don't even know exist. We will make sure no empire like the Concord ever rises again, and if anyone dares to bring war upon us. His eyes darkened. Then they will learn, as the overlords did, why humanity does not kneel. The message was clear: stand with us or be left behind. And one by one, the species of the galaxy chose their future. In the years that followed, the age of fire and steel began. Humanity led a new coalition, stronger than the Concord had ever been. With Terran innovation and adaptability, they'd rebuilt what had been destroyed, integrating species into a new galactic order. No race was enslaved, no world was oppressed, but none were allowed to forget what had happened. The galaxy would never be the same. The Vorak, once conquerors, now served as humanity's enforcers, their warrior culture reforged into an elite defense force. The T'Keri, once traders, became masters of logistics and trade, their wealth now fueling humanity's growing empire. And Earth. Earth had become the heart of it all. No longer a backwater world, it was now the beating core of the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. The homeworld of the rulers of the stars. The Concord had fallen, and in its place, humanity had risen. Stronger, smarter, unyielding. The throne of the galaxy belonged to mankind, and they would never fall.